My journey down the self-hosted rabbit hole continues. Last video we looked at the OS and the hardware decisions for my system. All the parts are here, jacked. We're gonna get them installed, get it dialed. We're gonna get TrueNAS installed, all the data pool set up, all the data sets configured. Let's go. Okay, so the first thing I did here was lay out all the parts. Made a bit of a char computer-y, if you will. Thought that was pretty funny. My wife didn't. And then the first step was to change out the processor from the Core i7 to the Xeon. And if you've never done this before, it's quite simple. Just pull the cooler off and then clean up all the old heat transfer compound, the grease on the back. And this was quite dried on, so I used a razor blade to scrape it off. And then some alcohol to really clean it up and get all that residue off. Nice and clean. And here's a new processor, the Xeon. And that's gonna drop right in here once we remove the i7. So this just pulls out. And the new one gets dropped in. Clamp it down again. And then give the processor a wipe with some alcohol to clean that up, and then apply the thermal grease. I do the center dollop method here. Some people spread it around, some people do it crisscross. I just put a little bit in the middle and that should spread out. Okay, so get the cooler installed again. You can do a bit of a star pattern on the bolts. Make sure it's clamped. Plug it back in and ready to move on to the RAM. So that's the 32 gigs installed. And then installing the drives, I had to buy another one of these drive caddies, the blue plastic that the drive is held in. Those just click into place. And then try to find a spot for the second SSD. This is the boot SSD. And it's kind of just held on there with one screw. There's probably a better way to mount it, and if you got some ideas, let me know. But the power cable between the SSDs just barely reached each other. And then my attempt at doing some cable management here, getting all the serial ATA cables hooked up. Now, before installing TrueNAS and setting everything up, I wanted to test the memory. I bought this stuff off Amazon. It was the cheapest ECC memory I could find. I heard stories of people getting bad sticks, so I wanted to test it out. And I did that using memtest86. So to do that, we're gonna go to memtest86.com and download their free version and get into that folder in the terminal if you're on Mac. There's instructions on how to do this if you're on Windows or Linux in the download. But we got our USB stick installed, so we're gonna do disk util list to see what device it's at, and it's at disk 4. That's our little 4 gig stick we're using. So we're gonna do a disk duplicate with an input file that's equal to memtest86 USB image, and the output is going to be our device disk 4, and the conversion is going to be a sync. You can read up on that, but it's what's required for this one. Okay, so that took quite a while, as you can see. So it's now transferred. We're going to test that out in the PC now. So when you boot into Memtest, you don't have to do anything, change any settings. You just leave it and it goes right into the memory test. This took quite a while. I let it run overnight and I woke up the next morning and it passed. So then to install TrueNAS, I had to change the serial ATA setting to HCI and then boot it into the install stick. The installation is really straightforward. Just go through the steps, make sure you select the right drive that you want to install it to. For me, it was the 128 gig SSD. Set up a password, and then reboot the system and remove the USB stick. So you can see we're in the dashboard now. And we have the Xeon processor now installed and the 32 gig of ECC RAM. And now we're gonna set up our storage pools. And you can see we already have one set up, and that's the app pool. Now I was able to import this from the 1 terabyte SSD that I was using in my test system. It just transferred straight across, and when you go import pool, it was an option here to import it. I imported it, and it's just transferred across all the configuration. All the data is still there from all the config files that I had set up. So hopefully we can set up the apps on the same drive and not have to reconfigure everything. Now to set up the data pool, we're going to create a new pool here. We're going to call this data pool. This is where we're going to store all of our media and documents. We're not going to encrypt it. That's more for protection against physical theft. And for the data, we're going to do a mirror layout. And this gives us redundancy. So it's 1-to-1 across the two drives. So we have one mirror set up across two different 10 terabyte drives. So the width is 2, and the number of virtual devices created out of those two drives is 1. So that's all we're gonna set up in this section. We're not gonna get into the log or the cache or any of this. We're gonna go straight to review. We're gonna say, yep, that's the pool we wanna create. Confirm, and it's gonna create the pool. And there it is, it's done. So we have app pool and data pool. Now next we're gonna set up the data sets. So you can see we have our app pool here, our data pool here, and under app pool are the data sets that I transferred across from the test system. And the way I had this set up was the app pool contained all the config files for the applications that I installed. And there's different ways you can do this. You can let TrueNAS store the config files in like a hidden data set, or you can specify where you want to store them. I originally had them stored on a data pool, but it was causing a lot of read writes on the data pool. I could hear the hard drive spinning up and down. And it was doing that when the apps were writing to log files. And so I decided to move it to the SSD drive and store the app configs in a data set here. And the reason I pull them out into their own data set is so that I can back it up into the cloud. And if for any reason that app pool drive fails, I have a backup for my config files and I don't have to reset up all my apps. So you can see the apps that I had already installed, and that's where the config files are stored. And then I also have a virtual drive set up for the Home Assistant virtual machine. So there's a few data sets we're going to set up underneath the data pool. And those are one for documents, if I can spell it, one for downloads, and one for media. And within media, we're going to set up movies, shows, and the documents, self-explanatory, what we want that for. The downloads is going to be a temporary download location before files get transferred into different data sets. And then the reason we have media broken out into these is we're going to give apps different access to the different data sets that they need to access. So let's go ahead and make all those. And when you set up the data sets, there's presets that you can use to help with the permissions that are going to be required, whether it's going to be used as SMB share, apps, or multi-protocol share. So our downloads folder is only going to be used for the apps. So we're going to use the app preset. Our documents folder is going to be set up as an SMB share. And before we do that, we need to set up at least one local SMB user so we can do that. So let's jump over and do that now. And then we'll come back and set up that data set. So you go into credentials and create a new user. And the name is going to be SMB. And then choose a password. And it's going to be an SMB user. Okay, so we'll go back to Datasets under a data pool and create our documents. We can start the SMB service, create our media, set up shows. Now for each of these data sets under media, we're going to want our apps to be able to write to these. So under the permissions, we're going to edit and add a user, and we'll select the preset apps user and save that. And do that for the rest as well. Okay, that's it. The home server is ready to go. We got TrueNAS installed, we have the data pool set up, the data set set up, and now we can install the apps we want to install. So if you're interested in what I've installed and what I'm setting up on mine, I'll do a video on that. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.